Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about everything you need to know about Expedition in Path of Exile 2. I'm recording this 4 days after patch 0.5.3 just hit the building, and it is a pretty big one. There's a lot of changes, and we'll go over all of that. In 0.5.2, there were also quite a few changes, so ever since the last video, a lot of things changed, which basically made me redo everything from ground up and just make this video as a catch-all. I've also learned a lot more about Expedition. The first video I put out was, I think, in week 1, and just so you know, if you're not willing to learn a lot of these small details about Grand Expedition, it is not as, I guess, easy as some of the other strats where you just go in, you kill some monster, and all you have to know is like what tablet modifiers and what map modifiers you have to do. There's a lot of small bits and information, which is everything I'm going to lay out in this video. If you're not willing to do that, then I would honestly just not even bother, because Expedition is very skill intensive, and the difference between knowing what's going on and not knowing what's going on is brutal. Now in this video, I'll talk about 2 strategies, although I will not be referring to them because you have to know everything in this video to kind of do expeditions. But the low investment strategy will be without Aldur Saga, and with Aldur Saga, that is the more RNG heavy, big payoff, 200 divines sometimes kind of strat. And that one I will cover at the end, but you have to know everything leading up to it in order to do it. With that being said, what changed since patch 0.5.2 and 0.5.3? If you don't care about this, if you've never done Expedition before, skip ahead. But for everybody who has seen my first video, for example, watch the segment. 0.5.2 was a ton of badly informed changes that made it so Expedition was actually nerfed when they wanted to buff it. Most of that had to do with them nerfing the bonded modifier, which was one of the biggest payoffs. It basically was raining rares, and they drop a lot of extra loot, especially if you're juicing and you're using tier 16s, and that got nerfed. And I mean cut to like 10% of what it used to be, and therefore Aldur Sagas and everything just went down really hard. And there was some other changes that gave you an extra greater chaos here or there, but not really all that great. So if you were playing Expedition in between here, it probably felt pretty bad. And then came patch 0.5.3, which made the mechanic a lot better. And first up, they increased the amount of Grand Expedition remnants by a lot. Before you would get between 5 and 7, and now you can get 10 plus. It is quite incredible. On top of that, they made it so the chests matter a little bit more. They did make it so you only have 15 explosives, but overall they count a lot more. They made it so Stern and Maps drops a guaranteed logbook. He is sometimes bugged, but most of the time it works. And then the runic monster modifiers improve the reward from monsters more significantly. This is the biggest change. This makes it so ground loot is actually back on the table. So you will actually drop stuff from the rares that spawn now, and that is a pretty big deal. And we're going to go over that in the video. Otherwise, I will say that the mechanic also has gotten harder, but I would hope that most of you guys have improved your character since then. Let's get into it though. First point, how do you unlock everything? So Pharaoh will be up during campaign, and he will ask you to do certain things. On the right side of the screen, you will see the quest that you have to complete, and there's one every act, and you will have to do it for the first time. You will end that in Act 4 with a free Grand Expedition that you can do kind of to try things out, right? Now, on a second character, you do not have to redo this again, although he will have the quests again, so just so you're aware. And after that, just so you know, moving forward, you do not have to unlock any more recipes after campaign. If you press B, it will still show you a recipe book, and it will say undiscovered, but it does not matter. It will be discovered on the first time you actually see it. So for example, if you get a mirror, it will fill out that entry. It doesn't mean you have to farm a mirror recipe anywhere. Now, after campaign, you will first spawn in here on the Atlas, and you will have the fortress right ahead of you. Do all the quest line, unlock all your Atlas passive skill points if you can, ASAP. It will be important. All of these do scale with Expedition, or at least most of them. Stuff like the layouts, yada, yada, yada. We'll talk about the Atlas passive tree a little bit later, but do your Atlas skill tree first. As with most mechanics, by the way. Now, afterwards, you'll have to go down here to the sea, and you'll get to the Ruins of King's March. And here you'll start a quest line that gets you through all the different bosses. There is 4 in total, and then you get the 5th boss, which is like a crater thing. Doesn't really matter. You'll get to it. Do that. I'm not 100% sure if you need to do it or not. Obviously, this is the first time we're playing Expedition. We'll see in next league, I guess. Or if it blocks anything, but just do it. It's just a ton of free logbooks. Now, next up, let's talk about logbooks. These are items that will unlock an ocean biome. So whenever you see this little ship right here, it will tell you, use a logbook to chart the area, and it will open a new area. So for example, I will click on here right now, boom, and I will open this area with a certain amount of new tiles. Now, next to the logbook in your expedition stash, if you don't have one already, it is quite helpful, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. You will see these sagas right here: Medved Saga, Uhtred Saga, Olruf Saga, and Voranas Saga. And these are the 4 bosses that you did during the quest line, and you can basically force them. So let's, for example, say I want a Uhtred in the area. I right-click it like I would an omen, and then I open a logbook, and it will consume this item and give you a guaranteed boss. For what I'm going to show you, I would highly recommend to not do these unless you want to do Uhtred for the quest. There is a secret quest where you can get a very expensive unique item and then you can spam Uhtred. These are quite expensive though, but if you want, you can check out the video down below in the description. Now, when hovering over these uncharted waters, you might have also noticed the island rumors. These actually mean something. So you have 3 lines right here that say something. Something fishy, star drinker, and endless cliffs. What the hell does that even mean? Well, it tells you what's going to be in this tile that you're about to unlock with the logbook. There's a nice spreadsheet here made by Jestra1220, which outlines this pretty damn well. There's a lot of these spreadsheets. You can choose whatever you want, but I'll link this one down below in the description. And it will tell you what the rumor means. For example, fallen stars means more, unknown ruins, exhumed ruins, and so on. We're going to go into some of the more important ones, but you can also see that you mainly want the top ones. These are the Grand Expedition ones, which are the ones with the stars around. Other than that, you will also hear from rumors that there's unique maps. So for example, Almost Paradise means you're going to get an Untainted Paradise if you're looking for that. The bosses have their own rumor, and then also the sagas. So in general, take this and just kind of learn it. It'll be something that you get over time. What are the top rumors though? First up, anything that gives you a Grand Expedition is good. So learn the spreadsheet. All of them is there. In terms of like tiering, you can take it into consideration, but all of them are decent, at least decent. Then you have more of the Fallen Skies, which you can see as a rumor as Fallen Skies. And this one gives you a unique map, a special unique map, that gives you any reward up to Rune Tier 8, which could be, depending on the market, 20, 30, 40 divines at minimum. There's no RNG involved. So whenever you have that one, big deal. Also make sure that you use a Visions of Paradise tablet whenever you have that one, because it does actually work. You do have to unequip all your other tablets though, and then put it in the lone slot. Otherwise it doesn't work. And sometimes it still bugs out and doesn't work, but it works like 9 out of 10 times. Now there are 3 types of maps in these ocean biomes. There's normal maps, which come with a free expedition. So it's just like 3 runes. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And then you have the boss map, which has this boss icon with a deadly map boss. You will have a boss encounter and then have a chance for special loot. They are okay, but you don't really want to force them. Out of all of these 3, they're probably the worst return-wise. And then you have the Grand Expeditions. And these one have this swirly gray thing without the boss icon. This is what you're looking for. Now, once inside, you're greeted with this. And if you're not used to working with your minimap, now's the time to do so, because it can be quite confusing just going off of these polls. You will have a really, really bad time. So make yourself accustomed to that. If you're not, then tough luck, I guess. But what does this consist of? First, you have remnants. Then you have these chests that you can see these poles in the ground. Then you have random rare monsters, which you also have seen in maps before. There are these double red flag poles. And then there is also an environmental factor. For example, in Barren Atoll, the shtick is that there's a ton of strong boxes that you can break open if you want to. Usually you can engage with these, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. This is a lot of learning by doing and would completely get this video way too long. But that is the gist of it. Now, the most important part of all of this are the remnants. You'll see right here that this is a remnant with 6 runes is what they're called. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's blue and purple runes. Now, I could go into this in depth, but personally, engaging with this too much will let you waste time. It is something you'll learn over time and you're going to get efficient with it. But the gist is they enhance the monsters that spawn from this remnant encounter. So for example, this one is extra cold damage, chance to inflict, yada, yada, yada. Now the purple ones are a little bit more interesting because they actually make your loot better. Some of the blues do as well, but not all of them. There's also this yellow hue right here, which indicates that this modifier will be catapulted to the next one. So for example, I will path up here, 1, 2, these are the explosives. Per default, you can place them down with V. You can also just click on it and then place it if you prefer. But after that, I will path up here. Now, the next one, I can choose whatever I want, will inherit this rune. So it will make this encounter harder. Before patch 0.5.3, this was completely irrelevant. Now it is actually a pretty big deal. Now, purple runes have, for example, slain monsters may merge into stronger monsters. They may have monsters get respawned. They may have monsters are stronger, like empowerment. A lot of these runes are really strong. So if you get an early remnant with a yellow thingy above it, that's a big deal because then every single one afterwards will also get that. Now, what should you do with these remnants? The higher the rune reward, the better usually, but it's not always true. You should definitely check what these are worth. So for example, some of the lower rewards will be Chaos Orbs, which as you might know are quite expensive, and something like Chilling Flux is quite bad. Now then you also have chests, which you have to break open right here, and they will just give you the reward that they say they do. So for example, this one has a weapon icon, so it's going to give you a weapon. Now, there's two different versions of that. There's normal ones, and then there's also the kind of yellow ones that you might see right here. And these are better versions of normal chests. In the last patch, they actually took away the normal weapon and the normal body armor ones, so you can only get the good ones anymore. But for example, you can see the currency icon right here, and this one is not shiny, so it will give you an okay amount. And then there's this shiny yellowy one that has increased rarity. Now, these chests, as far as I know, do scale with your rarity, or at least the map rarity, although it is hard to say, but they definitely scale with the map rarity. Out of all of these, the best ones are the currency ones, followed by the question mark ones. And they have like this Kalgurin symbol right here. There's also the map one. If you're struggling for extra maps, then so be it. Another thing about these remnants, by the way, after you get more than 6 runes, they will actually turn purple. So for example, if you click on here, you can see the rewards get better and better. And as well as that, the color changes and the encounters also get harder and harder. Now, there's also these icons right here, these X markers, and they are just random things that appear on the map. It depends on the map. For example, this one is pretty bad. It only gives you extra gold, which, yeah, you don't really need to break open. You don't really need to think about. But there's other layouts where, for example, if you break this open, it will give you extra rarity on everything that follows. And that is usually how you can think about this. So you can see right here, I will just give you an example of a grand expedition right now. A lot of this is learning by doing, like I said, 15 explosives, and you just go. Now, the first thing I do when I get into a map is I actually do scout. And this is where you want to have a build that's quite fast, or you have blink, or you have good movement speed. If you don't have blink already, maybe you want to reconsider that. And I look at all the remnants. The chests, I don't have to scout. I already know what they do. But the remnants, I don't. So for example, if you see a purple shine through here, as you can see right here, there's blues shining through and there's purple shining through. The ones that have a purple shining through are usually the best ones. Now, this one is Sovereign Alloy. It's like 20 exalts or something, not the biggest deal, 30 exalts. So we keep moving, and you kind of have to memorize where they are. And yeah, this is a bad one. It's a 3. I'm not even looking at it. Personally, I do not look at 3s and 4s whatsoever. Sometimes they have like a Chaos Orb or 2. I just don't think it's worth your time. This one's pretty big. Now, when it comes to higher runes, important to know. Let's say, for example, Breath of Aldur. This one's not worth a lot. But what you have to realize is there's a lot of more monsters spawning if you have 7 runes than if you had, for example, 5. And those monsters are important. So for example, I put the Breath of Aldur in right here. And you can see this is a empowered power rune. So this will be, everything afterwards will be empowered. Now, I just scouted this and now I know, right? Like there's an empowered rune on the bottom. There's like some okay rewards, and that's about that. And so what I will do is I will actually path down on the bottom first, and then I'll try to build around that, and I will chain around. Now, these 4s and 3s will not be a big deal, and in general, this map doesn't seem very good. And when it comes to chests, on the way, you want to pick up as many of these as you possibly can, especially currency. But if it bricks you, like if it means you cannot get to another remnant, then do not worry about it. However, the only exception are the shiny ones. The shiny currency ones you want to have because they have a divine orb a lot of the time. So we'll do this. The 3s are just not very important, so I usually just skip them, and then we go all the way up. Like I said, this layout is not very strong. It only has 15 explosives. It's just not a big deal. But we can see right here, I can pick up another currency one. I go up top, boom, and yeah. So I'm probably going to end somewhere here. Now, I could have also picked up these 2, but it just wasn't in the cards, right? Like, this is just the better way. Now, at the end, you will get a checkpoint, and then you can go back to the start. From here on out, you just press detonate explosives. Now, there's a lot of bugs that can happen. Talk about that at the end of the video. But yeah, it will just keep exploding. It can sometimes get a little bit hard to know where you are, depending on the layout. But yeah, you can see right here, it just lit up. Now, mobs will spawn. And I'm gonna be honest, after the latest patch, some of these encounters are pretty rough, especially if you're getting 8 or 9 runes. I just showed you the first one I got. I'm not gonna fish forever to make you think that this is better or whatever. So this is what you see. There's a lot of ground effects, so especially if you're melee, it's a problem. Shatter at the end, boom. You already know the gist of this. And I have a pretty strict filter, but you can see there's quite a bit of stuff dropping right here. Greater, exalted orbs, and very often, or not very often, but sometimes you'll also get stuff like a divine orb, chaos orbs, vile orbs, whatever. This map is pretty much an underperformer, but yeah, it is what it is. You'll win some, you lose some. This was the one that gave you glass boys, bubbles, exalted orbs. You can see right here. There's a currency chest. Boom. We didn't get anything of note. Just a few exalted orbs. I already have them hidden. This was the shiny chest. I would say when it comes to shiny chests, the chance to get a divine is probably around 1 in 3, 1 in 4. Sometimes you even get higher tier currency. But it's really hard to say because the patch just came out, and you just keep following the chain. Make sure that on spawn, you kill the monsters immediately, so it actually continues the chain. And then there will also be situations where this is another shiny chest. Let's see if we get another divine. Probably not, but who knows? Nope. In this case, for example, we didn't get anything. There you go. Now, sometimes it can get bugged. Before you think, oh, my remnant is bugged, make sure that a mob didn't spawn somewhere on the edge of the screen, because that can and will happen. Mobs do sometimes spawn really badly and really randomly, so make sure you scout the area. If, for example, monster wave stuff coming, then that is probably the reason. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that your encounter is bugged. A lot of people assume that when in reality it's just, yeah, it can be quite buggy as a lot of things this patch. There's also this one mob that sometimes spawns. I think this is the mob that just spawns more monsters. It does not mean that you have to kill him. He's just dies after a bit. Yeah, so there you go. And boom, Shatter Remnant, Sovereign Alloy, and this one will also have decent loot, as you can see right here. Nothing crazy to write home about. At the end, we're going to talk about some of the more extreme loot examples. Now, is this whole thing worth it? Your loot will be quite decent. You will usually pull out 2 to 3 divines from the worst possible maps, and the best possible maps can be upward of 10 divines. However, you could also just portal in, check out all the remnants, and then portal out. If you want to do that, it depends on how fast your character are, how efficient you are at killing them. That is up to you. Let's talk about the rune shaping combinations in general, though. You saw only a 7 in this one, you saw a 6, but it goes way higher, all the way up to 10. So the flagship item at 10 is the Aldur's Legacy, and this one is quite expensive. It at some point was on like 400, then it went down to 200, now it's going back up. And this one you will get as a reward if you get a 10 rune. That is guaranteed. You will get this one as one of the combinations. But you'll also get, as a choice, either Medved's Boon, which gives you permanently, it's like a quest reward, 5% max life and mana. You have Uhtred's Boon, 10 Spirit Vorana, 5% all res, and then Orof with the extra passive skill point. Now, if we go down 1 at 9 rewards is sitting the best reward, which is the Mirror of Kalandra, which you'll probably never see. And you have the Hindekor's Lock, which there's a good chance you will also never see. These are incredibly rare, and I've never gotten them. Aldur's Legacy, I've gotten around 10 times, and I've sold them all the time from like 200 to, I think the highest was like 430 divines. Do note, though, that I'm playing this for a long time. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea. Mirrors and Hindekor's Locks are basically never going to happen. And then you have stuff that is going to happen, quote unquote, a lot, which is like 3 perfect Chaos Orbs, perfect Exalted Orbs, 10 Divines, you will get quite a bit. 3 Orb of Annulments, you'll get most of the time when you have 9 rewards. And then you go down the drain. Right here, when it comes to 8 rewards, the best one's probably Perfect Flux. And then also Aldur's Saga is at 7, which we're going to talk about as well. Here you can also really nicely see the blue runes, which are usually just the downside, and all of them give you a little bit of rarity, but not a big deal. And then you see the purple runes, and there's, for example, the power rune. The biggest one that you have to get notice of is the bond rune. Bond rune used to be completely busted, but it is not really as crazy anymore. This one makes it so you spawn extra rares and you have better rare modifiers. Now next, let's talk about what I call pathing maps, and these are just normal maps that aren't grand expeditions or boss encounters. They give you 1 guaranteed expedition, so everything in this ocean biome will have at least one guaranteed expedition. Doesn't matter what tablets you put in, doesn't matter, it is there. And that means you get another 2 to 3 extra remnants, which you can fish for good rewards, and they can also drop stuff. But on top of that, this is where you drop your logbooks. If you ever wondered where you get them, you will never get one in a grand expedition. You can only get them in normal maps. And I'll show you that in a second. Most of these have no biome. Now, if you hover over this one right here, it will say ocean, which doesn't give you anything from the Atlas passive tree right here. However, if you have certain ones that spawn on these islands, you'll see biome forest. So then it does work. But that's not really something you can look out for. It is just really random. And then another downside is that you don't get any special maps on the ocean. So if you're looking for Rakyadas or Garokans or whatever, but since those are extremely rare, you can, I don't know, like think about yourself whether that is worth getting a free expedition every map. However, these are actually quite strong, and believe it or not, they drop a lot of things. If you're farming, for example, tablets, this is a natural inclusion, and I'm never unhappy to run one of them. It's pretty straightforward. You just go in. Now, the first thing I'll say is if you're doing any sort of mapping normally, you will usually rush maps depending on where you're going. Are you going into a city layout, whatever? But the only thing you want to do in these maps is you definitely want to do your expedition. So for example, not that much spawned in this map other than like a deli fog. I killed the boss, whatever. But you always want to do your expedition. It is always worth to backtrack, so make sure even if the boss is already up that you still do it. In this case, I got to my expedition. So this is a normal expedition that you might have seen within the map. And yeah, we have a 6 here and a 4 with a purple, so we're going to check both. This one's 2 Chaos Orbs, that's not terrible at all. And here we have an Orb of Annulment, right? Like that's what I mean. You just go in, you get a freebie, sometimes it's nothing. Now, when it comes to logbooks, super important here, they mostly, almost always drop from these rares. So while I told you to mostly ignore these in grand expeditions, in these normal maps, you want to always break these open. These are a high priority, especially if there's multiple next to each other. And they're sometimes hard to see. You'll get used to it. So you go boom, boom, and then you open these. Make sure that you understand that you only have 5 explosives here, and you don't have to use them. For example, here I have 4. I will actually go down, though. I actually did miss 2, but whatever. So these can drop logbooks, and depending on what filter you have, they will make a tink sound. And they can theoretically drop from the normal remnants, although very, very rarely. Now, if you can, make sure that you explode them both at once, because then all the mobs will explode at once, and it will be way, way, way faster to clear them. Just as a small aside, boom, here I'll get 2 chaos, plus whatever the mobs afterwards. Like I said, once again, I have a very strict loot filter. As always, wiggle around if there's any mobs left. It can happen, for example, this mob right here. And that's about that. Also, don't be alarmed when some of the waves take longer. It really just depends on what the modifiers are on the runes. Sometimes it respawns monsters, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, we actually, nice bait, we actually did not drop any logbooks. Maybe if we open this one. So then we follow and we just do the rest of the map. Now, be sure that you do rituals, you do abysses, you do breaches, whatever is in here, you want to do it. Like I said, a lot of people literally only run these, and they are definitely worth backtracking for. They're quite strong, you'll drop a lot of tablets, and they are worth quite a bit of money. Now, when it comes to the Atlas passive tree, you want to fill out all of them. I know that some of them only work on biomes, but sometimes you still randomly have biomes on pathing maps, and all of these small things do add up. That being said, if you want to skip the biomes for now, that is okay. But have all the normal stuff, right? Increased rarity works, increased monsters, like rare monsters and whatnot. I guess the most important ones to have is really just this one here. You want to get the 15% increased effectiveness of rare monsters, and that is because in a lot of the grand expeditions, you already get a lot of rarity, and then getting the effectiveness as another multiplier is quite big. Otherwise, I personally go for an additional shrine, and I go for the additional rogue exile here, but these are really not that important, and they mostly have to do with stuff that doesn't concern you in expeditions. Now, when it comes to tablets and waystones, all you have to know is you want to use 3 irradiated tablets. That is because these are the only ones you can use in grand expeditions, as well as that they leave open random extra stuff for your pathing maps. So for example, you can drop a random abyss, random breach, random deli, and you will have a lot of chance to get extra tablets. So for example, a lot of my money actually comes from just farming these tablets while I'm doing pathing maps. I understand that obviously you might think, oh, it's all in the remnants, but these really do add up. I mean, these are like multiple chaos orbs right here, right? Every single time, you know the drill. So you're in a sense also half a tablet farmer as always, and that gets killed by Waystone chance. But When it comes to, in general, if you look at a map, what you need to look for is effectiveness is better than pack size is better than rarity. However, in general, running more maps is better than you overthinking and taking an hour to buy random maps that are then used up in half an hour. Just telling you right now, because I personally just throw in tablets you wouldn't even believe. So that's the first thing. Now, when it comes to tier 15s versus tier 16s, the way I currently do it is in normal maps, in pathing maps, I run tier 15s, and then I do run tier 16s in the grand expeditions. The amount of magic and rare items and normal items you're going to drop that are you can straight up craft that are I-82 or higher is quite ridiculous. So just telling you right now, most of these are not dropping from the rewards, but they're dropping after the remnants are done. Also, do note that these chests that have a weapon icon or a body armor icon have a guaranteed drop for an exceptional item, and those can be worth quite a bit. These cannot be I-82 because they're from the chests or their area level, which is at highest 81. But the rares can randomly drop 82s as well, and I have sold multiple of these for 10 plus divines. And do note that the weapon chests are significantly worse than the body armor chests because most weapons need I-82 to be good, exceptional, whereas there's a lot of, for example, body armor and whatnot that doesn't actually need I-82 other than boots. As for tablet mods, for grand expeditions, I go for +1 modifiers or extra rare monsters. Effectiveness is good, and rarity and pack size are quite decent. An example of this would be this. There's 3 mods that don't really do anything, but then there's a number of rare monsters. Most of the time, it's not that big of a deal. Now, you can buy these, but once again, do remember that running more maps is better than you overthinking. As for masters, we're using Jado. If you haven't unlocked all 4 points in him yet, do it right now. Super, super important. Make sure that all of your Waystones are always corrupted. You should be corrupting them anyways because tier 16 Waystones go for like 70 exalts or something, and you want to craft your own ones anyways, but make sure that you do that here especially. Verisium Remnants have a 10% chance to be rolled an additional time. This is completely OP, and it can actually stack with Lucky, which we'll talk about once we get to Aldur's maps. Partial translations, just extra explicit tablet effect, very strong. And then Keen Appraisal, which gives you 50% increased exceptional items found. And like I already said, this can be quite lucrative. On average, it's decent. Now, let's talk about the 2 forms of farming expedition here, because we're now going to go over the high investment option. The low investment option is everything I just talked about. You do pathing maps, which is very similar to tablet farming, and then you sometimes have these moments where you have a grand expedition and you can either get good stuff, decent stuff, or less good stuff, and you just portal out and you go next. So there's very little RNG involved, but it is a very strong strat, and I've done it quite a bit. But the second part here is the high investment expedition strat, which revolves around Aldur Saga. This one needs a ton of knowledge. Do not ever start with this. If this is the first time you're doing expedition or you have no clue what's going on, or a lot of the things in this video you heard for the first time, stay away from this. Do some normal expedition and learn what the hell is going on with the layouts and everything. Do not do this if you ever hate RNG. I've gone, I don't know, minus 100 divines before with these things, and then all of a sudden I go to plus 500 divine. Sometimes you have streaks where you get very unlucky. It is what it is. But on average, if you do 100 of these, they are very lucrative. If you're the kind of person who's usually in the comment sections about how you can't make money with this strat and you just lost 100 divines with Aldur Sagas, skip this completely. Whenever you find Aldur Sagas, sell it to other people and just pretend like this doesn't exist. Do note though that these are very prone to price fixing. Right now they're around 24 to 30. Sometimes they're hovering a little bit over 30. I've seen them get flipped, like everybody buys up all of them and they're 50 divines. And then at some point you just gotta say, okay, they're not worth it anymore. That is your judgment. I will just tell you how you can farm these. Now, when you hovered over grand expeditions, you might have seen that some of them have modifiers. These are the normal modifiers. Chests have a 15% chance to contain twice as many items. That's okay, right? Extra explosives, whatever may be the case. Cool. But when you do Aldur Saga, it's a little bit different. So you have to right click it first, like you would an Omen. And what these do is they add modifiers to every single grand expedition. So first you want to find the right spot for it. For example, I hover over here, it says last to fall, something fishy while roaming free. The bottom ones, once again, check out the spreadsheet, indicate that there is going to be 2 grand expeditions. And you can actually do this. You right click it again, and then it's going to sort through it, something fishy while roaming free. So you can see right here that it's going to have at least 3 grand expeditions. Usually, I would fish for maybe more, go a little bit more into detail, but for the showcase, I will just click it here. It's probably going to have between 3 and 4 grand expeditions. In this case, I got 1, 2, 3 only. Usually fine with me, but if you go for 4, it's better. Now, Hover over this. Verisium remnants have at least 5 rune slots, so it calls all the possibility for 3s and 4s, which are usually most of the ones. Then there's another 5 here, and there's one A Verisium in the area will have at least 7 rune slots. Now, these are all the modifiers that you can get. I wrote them down right here. The craziest ones that you can get are all remnants have at least 8 runes. I've had this one a singular time in the whole league, and I've done thousands of these at this point. So that is super, super rare. But if you get that, you will have around 10 runes that will all be at least 8 rewards. And it's almost impossible not to get something crazy. There's also one remnant has at least 9 runes, which is also absurdly rare. In general, these are way, way, way better because there's like 10 remnants in your map, or let's say 7 to 10 remnants, and these only secure one of them. There is also remnants are lucky. This one is okay and very RNG dependent. What it means is, for example, let's say it rolls and it determines it's a 5, but then it rolls again and it determines it's a 7, then it's going to take the 7 as your reward. It just rolls the amount twice. And it does actually, I think, multiply with this right here. So if you hit a 10%er on a lucky map, it can get pretty crazy. I don't have a confirmation for that, but sometimes there's some outlier maps where I'm just like, what the hell is going on? So what changes if you do these expensive maps? Always use tier 16 Waystones. You're going to get a lot of bases, and those you can then craft and possibly sell. On top of that, you want to use monster effectiveness and other relevant mods on your tablets. So where I said you can just throw in whatever, now you should definitely be looking a little bit more careful for extra monster effectiveness, extra monster modifier, extra rares. Quite strong because you're now going to get better chains. And then thinking about your explosions in there is a little bit more relevant. I'll show you this lucky map right here. And the biggest thing about these Aldur's maps is twofold. First, chests don't really matter that much in here. Most of your money will come from the remnants. It's very RNG, obviously, but also do not skip out on any remnants because it can get quite juicy. So you want to go in here and then scout out all the remnants. We have one here, nothing, nothing. So all of these are pretty mediocre, nothing. And then the 5th one on the right side up top, we have a decent one right here. This one has an asterisk creativity, which I think right now is around about 10 divines. So you definitely want to check this one out at the end. Now you can also check what it has though. So if, for example, it had a time rune or power rune or death rune here, maybe you would want to path here first if it had the yellow thing up top, because then you would first hit this and then all the remnants afterwards would get that modifier. But in this case, it doesn't really matter, so you just start pathing. So for example, over here, you just get 3 exalts. But once again, you do want to path to every single one of them, and then you just do the encounter. Now, when you do Aldur Saga, there's a lot more gamble involved, but you also have new items that you maybe will never see if you do normal expeditions. So for example, Astrid's Creativity is worth around 9 divines. Obviously, your big gamba is Aldur's Saga. You also have the Cardigan's Epiphany, which at this point is, I think, only 2 divines. So there's going to be a lot of runes that you want to look up. Now, there's an overlay that literally tells you how much stuff is worth on the right side. Otherwise, you can go here to PoE Ninja and check them out yourselves. You need the runes right here and the Verisium. And you can see, for example, Celestial Alloy is 2 divines, and there's a few 1 divines in between. Knowing kind of what is worth more and what is worth less saves you a lot of time while you're doing grand expeditions. As for some bugs and annoyances, I will list them out right here. I don't know if I can even find relevant gameplay footage in the background, but monsters are spawning too far away. Sometimes you think the wave is over and there's like a monster that spawned somewhere behind a wall where you have to go around the corner, or they just spawn a screen away. Usually your map is not bricked. 99 out of 100 times it's not bricked. There's just a monster somewhere, just so you're aware. Then sometimes mobs are spawning within a cave. So it can happen that you break open a cave and then the monster's in there. So you have to do the cave and then you come out and all of a sudden the wave is solved. That can happen. The cave can brick your remnant. That is very rare, but sometimes if you explode a remnant and a cave at the same time, literally your explosive will just stop. Mobs can spawn behind a breakable wall, so something that you didn't break open, so you cannot even get to the mobs, and that breaks your map. It can happen. Maps just brick randomly. Can happen. And then sometimes you open a map that just has only the caves, no remnants whatsoever, and you just portal out and you're like disappointed. Just telling you right now, this mechanic is quite buggy. Overall, everything I said in this is 99 out of 100 maps that you're going to encounter, but it can happen. Either way though, that is all I know about Expedition right now. Whether you're doing the low investment strat, which is quite competitive with some of the other low investment strats, especially tablet farming, or you're doing the high investment strat that's a lot more gamba and RNG, Hope you learned quite a bit from this video. And yeah, I've been having quite a bit of fun with Expedition this patch, and I will be playing it till the end of the league. And yeah, with that being said, since I still have a slogan, see you next time.